think these days we have heard a lot of things about training and training of trainers, etc. But I actually lack the description of what is then the gender issues in this sector, we are talking about. I would like to have more examples, Which situation are we talking about? Where does it come in? So I would like to have more examples, perhaps not only from you, but from other people, because after all, we know capacity building is necessary for many instances, but what about?
No, let's just take 4 questions then.
Can I speak?
Oh,
sorry.
No, you can. No, it's okay. Just a second. Minoli is ENERGIA. I'm sure she can.
Right, she doesn't count. Okay.
Can you
Now, just a question for Ganesh, if you can clarify about the renewable energy policy or strategy versus the energy policy. And also to the... Thank you. Sorry, I'm lazy. So if you can clarify, because it's quite impressive to see, and correct me if I'm wrong, because the topic is networking and capacity building. I mean, it's interesting to see how an NGO, because you are an NGO, right, Ganesh, was able to really influence, thanks to the support of ENERGIA, I'm pretty sure about it, but to really reach, the doorsteps of policy, or supporting policy making or policymakers. So the question to you, if you could clarify, because I got a little bit confused, whether there are 2 policies or 2 strategies, and to both you and your neighbor to ask, because in Egypt it's about strategy, right? To really, I'm not trying to be, but anyway, why is it not a policy? Why were you able to achieve strategies? Because at least in my organization, a strategy is a sub. It's not a policy, it's a strategy. So it's a second level of commitment, I would say. So maybe the secret is in the words, but I'm simply trying to tease you to see where you were able to reach out to policy level. And the last question to Ganesh, how you support yourself as an NGO to be able to really reach out to this level of visibility. How can you do that?
You mentioned at the beginning of your presentation that it was ENERGIA that actually initiated the discussion on gender mainstreaming in the energy and water sector. And my question to you is, because I'm trying to gauge, this whole issue of where does the motivation come to do gender mainstreaming? And I feel it should come from the countries themselves. So my question in response to that is, do you think Nepal, or the sector that you're working in the water stroke energy sector, was actually ready for talking and doing gender mainstreaming? Or was this something that came more from outside?
Well, I would like to say something about this, including gender at various climate negotiating entry points. I think you mentioned rightly it should be national communication, which is given in the COP. Then also we should consider Napa, you said in CDM also they are trying to see how many CDM projects involve women. GEF, Global Environment Facility, should also report and try to do much more on gender and climate change. And also, I think IPCC is the one which should really put on a scientific basis what are the issues about women and so on. So because IPCC does include social sciences and economics and so on. Then subsidiary bodies and subsidiary body on implementation technology. So there are many entry points for gender, and all of them need to be explored by us. But by the way, I should say that first gender and climate change event was organized in COP8 by Irade in New Delhi, and that was thanks to UNDP in Susan McDade's time, which encouraged us to organize that event. But you were right, after a while it was kind of not coming up as much, and I'm glad that it's revived again.
Regina.
Thank you, Nozipo. My question is directed towards Natalia. I realize that you have done a lot of trainings, but have you made follow-ups? Have you actually measured the impact of these trainings? Because having a training is one thing, and following on the impact is another. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. My question is for Natalia again, which is seems to be a very interesting subject area now, climate change. So my question is, when we look at the whole paradigm, capacity building on gender and climate change, gender is massive area, and when we look at climate change, we all know that it consists of multiple tracks. Training on climate change is a difficult task within our small country, Sri Lanka, because I would like to say that there are no agencies who would like to undertake the commitment for that coordinated effort. It involves coastal development, it involves fisheries, it involves agriculture, forestry, environment, natural disasters, and many others, right? So when we train people, there's no limit, it's a huge ocean. So I would like to learn from you, based on your experience, what are the successes that you can present to us, and how have you dealt with the situation and coordinated with those multiple stakeholders? This is a simple question which I find it difficult to answer. Thank you very much.
Yes. Can you hold your question? Maybe you can modify it for the next presenter, please. Yeah.
Okay. So with regard to the training, well, I mean, our training program for the partner organization and also collaborator are clearly targeted for, like, gender sensitization within their organization. Because when you train the project manager, it is not only project manager, but I think the ideas and the concept that has been discussed and trained and in the training program has to sort of, share with the management, upper management as well as in the lower, So this is basically, I think it is clearly targeted. There are areas of focus such as, how to conduct gender audit, how to make a gender baseline, for example, in every program, how to prepare a gender responsive budget. So these are some of the very specific areas of subject that has been dealt in the training program. And with this, expertise, I think these organizations have been able to utilize these tools and also concept in your own program. So, this is one aspect. Another one is with regard to the response to Francisco, is it is not really like the policy making is coming up, because before the strategy for the national policy on gender have been prepared. I think there has already been a lot of efforts, a lot of initiative done by different partner organizations. Say, for example, the EAPC supported. EAPC ISAP supported the renewable energy program. REDP is another example. Biogas support program is another example. Improved water bill program is another example. So these are the programs where I think the network has collaborated closely and trying to develop a sort of a strategy. I think this work. So it is basically when there is a clear indication that some of the gaps have been identified, and then how these gaps were filled in. I think there is sort of tremendous improvement in the implementation of the process with regard to participation, with regard to the participation of both men and women at the grassroots level, community level. So there has been a clear evidence from these examples, which have been very instrumental for the policymaker to realize that I think this is the time that we really have to sort of refine the policies. So this is basically more like a bottom-up process. So that I think policymakers are more convinced, and then they have now coming up with a clear strategy, which is presently in the process of operationalizing with agencies who are working in the renewable energy sector. And one question with regard to, I think, well, whether this is more like, formation of the gender, energy and water network is basically from the ENERGIA side. No, I think, well, before ENERGIA has supported the initiative in Nepal, there has been a growing realization within the country by the organization, by the NGOs, by the partner organizations who have been working in this sector, that there is a need for, specific intervention in order to address the gender issues in order to improve the program implementation aspect. So there has been a growing realization. So the consultative workshop have been sort of designed to discuss on these issues. So initially we entered in from the, we try to focus on energy, but I think there has been a concern that energy and water is closely integrated. So water has to be part of the whole process. So I think we decided to have the water as one of the key areas of gender intervention, along with the gender, along with the energy. So it is not only it is not the sort of outside driven. I think this initiation have been taken from the country itself, by the NGO, by the organization, and then I think ENERGIA was supportive in terms of coming up. Okay, if there is a sort of a initiative from the inside, I think ENERGIA was very much ready to provide the technical support in order to get this moving. So this is sort of an initiative that is, it is not really that, it is more like a ENERGIA-driven thing, but ENERGIA was very supportive once that sort of a environment had been created within the country.
So I had a lot of questions here. I hope that I'll answer all of them. The TOTs that we did, the training of trainers, had a really like a mushrooming effect in terms of measuring impacts of the trainings. We do measure them. I mean, the impact was so great that it's hard to put it in the presentation. I can give you some examples. For instance, the training manual was used in over 39 programs at universities. And so as a basis for developing curriculum on gender and climate change. And so that leads to creating even more experts in the field, in the growing field. The training manual was translated into Arabic, and that translation initiative was actually led by one of the trainers and her organization in Jordan. She felt like there was a need to bring this literature into the Arab League and the Arab countries, and that made huge change in terms of providing the information to people and to women's groups that they communicate in Arabic. So it was really of huge importance in terms of, and I can give you more example. There was a participant from Philippines who developed the Center on Excellence on Gender and Climate Change from the training. I mean, so there's a real mushrooming effect. It also created those connections between sort of the experts and the practitioners in the field of gender and climate change. And so there's this growing network. And also we bring those experts to our national level work because they can really provide input to governments and sort of participate in the national and regional decision making. In terms of the the methodology and the topics that we include in the training of trainers, we try to emphasize that women are agents of change. And powerful, and really to include them in decision making as sort of leaders on their own right. In terms of the difference between policy and strategies, there's actually a lot of international policy making on gender equality, like the CEDA, the Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination. It's all implemented, and people don't know about it. Like a lot of the ministries of environment experts who are experts in energy and environment don't know about those legal instruments that are developed in the gender equality framework. And so that we also work with a lot of legislators on the national level, but that's also difficult because there's not that many women legislators. The participation of women in decision making is really low. I think globally it's about 15% or something like that. So it's a great, it's a hurdle, it's very tough. In terms of international policy on gender and climate change, there's more and more language in the UNFCCC negotiation text, and that is trickling down to the national policies as well, but then it's still not being implemented. So we try to focus on the strategies. The strategies operate on the five-year framework, and it's very implementable in terms of having action plan, having parties who are responsible, having institutional framework for implementation of the strategy, and that also leads to developing more policy making. But we found that the strategy is much more effective because it actually it leads to policy making as well, but it also leads to concrete results on the ground and implementation. And you know, some of the countries took it and applied for funding for it. I think Jordan applied for like a $10 million fund to implement the strategy on gender and climate change, because they can see. I mean, it's measurable. It's like a complete product that they can take and use in different sectors, and they can also build on it. I've heard from a colleague from World Bank, from CIFS, that a lot of what we've done in the national strategy on Mozambique is being used in their CIF projects. And so they have a lot of that knowledge is being developed on the national level, and also the linkages between the different stakeholders. So it's extremely successful. Regarding JEF, actually there's a lot of happening in JEF. We're working on the harmonization between the Rio Conventions and the JEF. So IUCN has been working on this project for a year now. We developed, 2 years ago, we developed a gender action plan for the CBD, the Biological Convention. Last year, just this past year, we developed the action plan for the Desertification Convention, the UNCCD. And hopefully next year we'll develop a gender plan for the Climate Change Convention. They've also requested our support and are interested in that. And so then the 3 Rio Conventions will have gender plans of action, which create concrete steps and coordination within the convention on how to integrate gender. And the JEF has also created some mainstreaming criteria in their new safeguards framework that was just adopted on their 44th meeting in Washington, D.C., I think in October. And so they're moving towards that direction. It's not being implemented yet because it's just passed, but what the gender mainstreaming criteria says is that they will have to have a gender expert and specific gender references in all the projects for the projects to be approved. Or else, if that criteria will be absent, the projects won't be approved. So that's quite successful. I think that's it. Thank you.
Okay, I think I missed to respond to one of the questions. Yeah. One of the questions from Mr. Francisco, how do we sort of support the sustaining of the network? I think, well, the institutional commitment and also from the members are very key in order to sustain the network, because, I mean, the institution who is hosting the network has more responsibility, along with other partner organizations, to contribute for the growth of the network, both technically as well as financially. But in our case, I think, well, another key aspect is there has been a tremendous support from the advisory committee as well as by the resource group, because another mechanism approach for mobilizing the funding is engaging the network on consultancy and studies, which also provided, additional resources for sustaining network. So the contribution from the, expert contribution from the resource group and advisory committee has been very instrumental in terms of raising the funding as well as in terms of mobilizing funding further network, along with the contribution from the member organization and also from the members. So these are very key.
Thank you, Natalia and Ganesh.